I argued with my mom a few weeks ago, and it finally clicked to me that she has a very different idea of how the shoe of productivity should fit like on me. She believes that weekdays are for constant work with little to no rest, and that weekends are reserved for days off. And it is just a typical view of work-life culture. She works a traditional job, all of which, despite of what field you are in, it does require creative thinking, and the matter is that we are just inherently creative beings. We are in constant spontaneity, planning, and experience. The difference in a person who lives in creativity to a visitor of it is really just how we use the tools. A visitor tends to exist in a sort of linear manner, tuning the creative world out just to focus on efficiency, and tuning back in when it's necessary for problem solving. My mom isn't flawed for thinking this way. It helps her perform better at work and focus on less things at a time. This manner of thinking is specific and rigid. It's this amount of time you work, this is the way you talk to customers, and this is the way you take care of issues. To an extent, it requires creative thinking, but it still sits in the boundaries of those rules. But trying to sort of apply that grid and perspective to a creative person, that's how the conflicts in perspective come out. Productivity to quote unquote regular people is measured by statistics and numbers. Creative people don't typically exist in that grid. What productivity actually looks like for a person who lives creatively are two constant states, existing and making. Existing is for the in-between moments. It's the moments you sit in a waiting room throughout life when making isn't available. And this is when we are able to invite ideas in. This is when we become magnets to concepts, stories, melodies. The irony of it, though, is we live in a world where every second is filled by some type of stimulation, whether it's a conversation, music, scrolling. We are always filling these moments, and it closes the door on these ideas, and we turn off that magnet within our brain. As an entire civilization, not just creatives, we can forget to just exist. We constantly crave stimulation and distraction from the mundane, but we forget that stimulation exists in the waiting room. I'd like to say that if you have somebody in your life, whether it's a friend, roommate, boyfriend or girlfriend, husband, wife, who is creative, there are moments they may seem distant, disengaged, sad, or just lazy from the outside. Honestly, they may simply just be collecting, connecting with the world, and inviting ideas in. Just give them that room to disappear for a second so that they can return with an idea they might have not had at all before. The act of making is when we feel we are actually engaging in productivity in the eyes of society. I'd say that is when our ideas are created into something tangible outside of our minds. It's a simple idea turned into a painting, song, poem, or lyrics, etc. Making is the most visible aspect of being creative. You always know when you're making, but you don't really notice when you're existing. Society only notices the making and development of an idea, and when it's actually realized, not when the idea came to the person during their walk. Those two states aren't just exclusive to creative people either. The difference isn't really just black and white, who gets to make or exist, but when you choose to step into making and existing. Visitors tend to tune into creativity every so often to come up with some sort of witty response at a get-together every weekend when they paint for fun, or to come up with a solution to a problem at work. Creative people live there. We exist in those two states, constantly looking for inspiration, ideas, and bringing them to life. As I've continued to live in and observe creativity, I've noticed two distinct kinds of making: spontaneous and planned. Spontaneous creation is the state we tend to constantly engage in when approaching a blank slate. I think spontaneity is a fantastic tool, and it tends to create some of the best ideas since our brain brings them in a quick and honest manner, rather than being deliberately refined through constant thought. A lot of iconic songs come from spontaneity, and I think it's part of what makes those songs so great. and it's the heart and soul of genres such as jazz, rap, and rock. A good example of this is Paranoid by Black Sabbath. That song was made in a pinch, and it took about 20 minutes to record since their album was not meeting the legal requirements for being published, and it's now one of the most iconic heavy metal hits of all time. Spontaneous creation actually comes to everybody, every day. When we're having a conversation, the words we use to respond come so naturally to us that it's hard to tell we're using our creative thinking. Spontaneity is also the heart of comedy, being crucial with timing to land a joke. It is also the foundation of sports such as boxing, which requires the athlete to tackle unforeseen problems caused by their opponent on the spot. That type of thinking can only do so much for you, though. The quote-unquote vehicle's problem, then, is that it can only take you so far. And that's when planned creation becomes important. In my opinion, planned creation is pretty heavily underutilized in creative fields since it's not about the idea of being in reach conveniently. In my opinion, planned creation is heavily underutilized in typical creative fields since it's not really about the idea of being in reach conveniently. You have to wait for it to be able to be realized. It's about sticking your ideas and concepts down until you find time to bring it to the making process. The act of bringing it to life later on is what makes it planned creation. Take, for example, Horse Without a Name by America. It was written by Dewey Bunnell when he was 19, and they didn't actually record the song in the musical aspects until later that same year in 1970-something? Planning ahead can look like saving lyrics to your iPhone notes, humming into a voice memo, jotting down arrangement concepts, or doing quick sketches that vaguely resemble what your end goal is. Whatever it is, collecting ideas long before they're ever needed forces you to work around your current limitations so that you have a clearer picture of the initial vision once you bring it into the making process. Planned making can also look like leaving projects unfinished on purpose, or in other words, giving them room to exist and settle. And coming back days, weeks, or months later, which creates an amazing tool for refinement. When you spend time away from an idea, your brain soaks in new experiences. Whether that be new art, life events, relationships, and new things have been created. When you revisit that project at a later time, in that moment, your psychology, life, and knowledge have stretched and expanded ever so slightly. That new state of mind creates fresh new ideas for that project that wouldn't have existed had you finalized the project within that one day of your existence. Interestingly, it's a phenomenon observed just outside creative people or projects. When we regret something we said or did, it's usually because we are now placed in a different snapshot of life and our mentality has shifted. After emotions have cooled down and your head isn't clouded by one current perception of a moment, we do realize things could have been said kinder, softer, or maybe we realize that we could have stood up for ourselves more. The point is that new and usually better ideas arise through new experiences and perceptions. This application is for life as a whole, and we can't always be caught up within a moment. Honestly, neither is better than the other. Both of them create greatness, and if you take away anything from this, is that you should try using both as tools. You can use spontaneity to mangle a planned idea, or you can plan to mangle and refine a spontaneous idea you didn't finish. The tools really are at your disposal, but what it comes down to is how you use them. Interestingly, quote-unquote rest is viewed differently in typical work culture compared to creative people. For the average person, the ideal image of rest sounds like shutting your brain off within a space where there are no expectations, and throwing on a show, movie, maybe even reading a book. The main idea is that if it isn't productive, then it's resting. While it's blunt, this way of thinking does actually make rest way easier to accomplish, since jobs can be physically and or mentally taxing. There isn't a pinpoint definition for what rest is, since the activity and the way a person goes about it can vary greatly. The contrast then is that for creatives, rest doesn't always feel like there's some sort of absence of work. Every moment we spend awake is in the realm of productivity. Staring at the wall, being in a waiting room, people watching, or playing video games and engaging with other hobbies. That can appear lazy or seen as quote-unquote activities for relaxing to the visitor. Existing in society tends to be disheartening for the creative individual. We feel guilt for existing outside of making because creative work is already under the paradigm that it's easy to make. When people place the stigma that anybody can become a well-paid painter, writer, photographer, musician by just knowing the ropes, it's completely discrediting what actual creativity and the actual psychological work that goes into creating a beautiful piece of art. Ironically, the art that is considered boundary pushing can be the same art that reinforces that stigma. When somebody duct tapes a banana to a wall, it's pretty easy to think, well, I could do that because you probably could. And this paradigm blurs the lines between what resting and what existing is. The truth is that they exist in mutual harmony. Creative people are constantly in conversation with the universe. Our minds are a constant machine that continually works as a sponge throughout our lives, absorbing new perceptions, experiences, and ideas continually. As creatives, we allow the sponge to squeeze, pouring ourselves into our work, but when it comes to filling the sponge back up, perceptions among society become mixed. Watching a movie, watching a TV show, playing video games, or listening to an album all sound like examples of a simple-minded activity to burn time. What most people don't know or realize is that creative people do deeply engage in other creative works. We soak in every detail, from the camera shot angles to the meaning and emotion buried within each word said. Analysis of the story for a deeper meaning. What truly sets apart a creative from a visitor is just how we treat media and other art. When you spend your time analyzing a singular song, shot, line, or design choice, does it really count as rest? The only way I've ever experienced stillness in my mind is on a walk. Even then, it's still beyond difficult to get my thoughts to quiet down. My mind pulls things to think about all the time, even when I feel there is nothing to think of. As of late, I continue to come back to the same thought loops and analysis of my life as it currently is, as if it were really going to make a difference or change anything. The reality of my life right now is that I have to be patient, and nothing's going to change that. Generally speaking, creatives tend to be good at overthinking. Our brains try to latch onto anything, which makes it impossible for us to shut our brains off outside of sleep. When you finally figure out how to get the ball rolling, though, being able to not think and quite literally exist is one of the most blissful experiences, even if it's just for a moment. For me, taking a few laps around my neighborhood without music and feeling the wind blow around me with my eyes closed, that's how I experience that intimacy with nature. It's kind of freeing, and doing that consistently has made me feel way more inspired and way more driven to make something. If I'm being honest, it's probably what even gave me the idea to make this channel in the first place. Having a quiet, still mind isn't always useful though, which is why boredom exists. It's to pull ideas from outside. I mean, think of every place you've been bored. Your own bedroom, a waiting room, staring at your Steam library, sitting in a hotel with nothing to do. On the surface, we view these moments as mundane. Our brains automatically begin to crave stimulus to fill the gap in music, games, and entertainment. We find these moments to be at some sort of disservice to us, but it's really what stabilizes our brain. When you wait and sit in boredom, your brain gets a chance to find a baseline again and offload the stimulus, emotions, and stress from the day. Beyond just that, when your brain has offloaded these things, you may find it is actually easier to find new ideas and grab onto them. In this part of the existing phase, it's crucial to plan. What's truly ironic is that the most exciting ideas come from the dullest of moments. Visitor or permanent resident, this applies to you. It is crucial to engage in boredom every once in a while. You never know what idea might come from putting down the phone and engaging with boredom. Ironically, I kind of hate giving this kind of message because I feel like I'm older than I really am. I feel like I'm just some sort of parent trying to excuse the fact that there's nothing to do. Interestingly, you might have come to this video looking to dull your boredom. First, I'd want to say thank you for finding me intriguing enough to listen to me ramble for this long. And secondly, engage with your boredom after this video. You might be procrastinating a project you've been meaning to finish, or maybe you haven't touched your craft in a while. Trust me, after you stare at a wall for long enough, anything besides staring at it sounds like a lot of fun. The point is this though, regardless of whether you're a visitor or a resident, whether you paint once a month or play an instrument for fun, write poetry. Maybe you believe you lack creative talent. I simply just challenge you to put your phone down and exist. You don't need to do it full time. You don't need to become a monk and become a creative guru. It just means that you should just do it for a moment, and honestly, you'll probably surprise yourself. Don't forget to put your work down and allow yourself to exist.